we don't see that we want to go down the route of punishing our residents for what actually our customer satisfaction on the refuse service is 94%. It's very high, and why change it? It's working. Many of the machines actually come to the end of their useful life. We are looking at the current equipment. A lot of it now needs replacement. We are also looking at whether we can increase the use of cashless pay and display. A lot of them are quite old now, so that's why they're unreliable. The other reason why there's an unreliability factor is vandalism. We do suffer a huge amount of machines being tampered with. If there is a probably particular patch or a stretch of pavement which seems to lead towards entrances to parks and so on, then the SMTs will take that away and do some, they'll patrol. And once the word gets out that people are getting a fixed penalty notice, then it tends to solve the problem, at least for a period of time. And then the SMTs will come around and loop maybe a couple of weeks later, because it does tend to be people change their behaviour for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we have to come back and pick it up again. To make it objective, we employ an independent highways engineer to survey every road in the borough, but as you can imagine, it took some time, and then gave an objective listing on the condition. And then the worst roads were done first, because clearly there's always some kind of priority system. And so the roads that were in the worst condition were done first, and there is a rolling program. Every road will be somewhere on the list. That list will get amended if there is a deterioration. So if it was inspected, say, 2 years ago, it might have been in good condition compared to another road. However, if you sometimes get a series of cold weather which causes cracks, or if you've had building work or utility companies, for whatever reason, if the road surface is being disturbed, then sometimes later it can cause a chain effect and the road can deteriorate faster than expected. In which case we would, first of all, we inspect it, and the highways engineers would determine would patching or filling the potholes be sufficient, or does it need resurfacing. If it needs resurfacing, it will then go into the resurfacing programme, and it will simply be worked down as funds allow. All the street lighting in the borough, and this may not be popular in parts of the suburb, but all of the street lighting in the borough is being replaced over, we're 2 years into a programme, and in the next 3, I think possibly 4 years, every street lamp will be replaced. If you tell us where it is, an inspector will check it out, and then they'll post a letter through to the resident asking them to cut back their hedge or their shrubs. Within the suburb, no. I mean, we're not going to build new secondary schools, simply because obviously there's not the land, and I suspect if we had a piece of land big enough in the suburb, we might get a bit of opposition to building on it. What we are doing is the population in Barnet will grow by about 40,000 people in the next 10 to 15 years, primarily in the west of the borough, but not exclusively. And part of that is there will be an expansion of both the primary and secondary sector. Certainly there will be a new primary school on the Millville East development, and there will be a new secondary school in Finchley, which is the Wren Academy. I'm a cyclist. I hate cycle lanes. Okay, cycle lanes. We do not have a policy of expanding the cycle lane network. To be quite blunt with you, the cycle lanes work well in central London, where most of the roads are not heavily parked. I cycle around the borough on a regular basis, usually from home to the town hall. And the problem with cycle lanes, when we had them along Ballard's Lane, is I was constantly having to weave in and out of parked cars, which actually I personally found much more dangerous because the traffic didn't know whether I was coming or going. So most of the cycle lanes in Barnet were not well used because they were covered up by a parked car. So the reason why, that's one of the reasons why we're not extending the network, is because frankly, you couldn't use them because of the parked cars. We'd rather spend the money on resurfacing the roads, because as a cyclist, I'd rather have a smoother ride than having a cycle lane. Having said that, if Transport for London, who control the primary routes like the A1, the A1000 and North Circle and so on, came to us with a reasonable proposition to put cycle lanes on the main routes, we'd certainly look at that. Where we have the opportunity in new developments, there are built-in plug points, and in fact the Fairview development in Coventry will not only have built-in plug points in the car parking spaces, but also be introducing car clubs as well. They still happen, but what we shifted to is, on top of that, you used to get a routine sweep by a man with a broom. It used to be 3 times a year. That has been increased now to once a month. Now, you may say, well, I don't notice. And the difficulty is with many streets that where I see the street sweeper and I know that an hour later, because I live quite close to Finchley Central Shopping Parade, the road can be littered again. If you want to find out when your road is due to be swept, you can go onto the council's website and you can go under the environment and street cleansing, and there's a map, and you can click on the area, and it will tell you if your road is week 1, 2, 3 or 4. The policy of the council is to use paving stones, not tarmac, unless you have root damage, because the tarmac allows the pavement to move. But the policy is actually to use paving stones. If you have a specific area where paving stones have not been used and there's no root intrusion, then let me know and we'll have it checked. There's 2 things. If it's a major construction site, they'll take a deposit off them, so that after the construction, if there's damage to the pavement, they have to pay for the repairs. If we see a van and that's parked on the pavement illegally, they do get ticketed, but of course we don't always get to see them. But we will also, if we can prove they've damaged the pavement, sue them for the damages as well. Most of the maintenance work is spent on our premier parks. Everybody will live within a mile of a premier park, most of which are green flag. Then you have broad open spaces. So in Finchley you have what's called like Windsor open space, which is more like a natural walk. And we are now looking at, we're following a scheme which the Royal Parks use, which is introducing natural grasslands. Because a lot of these manicured lawns and flower beds are actually quite a Victorian invention. They're not really, not suggesting on the central square we're going to turn it into what's called an acid grassland. But if you look at some of our more open spaces along the brooks, that would be where you see natural cornflower and the natural flowers and birds coming back. The routine flower beds, yes, they're not as well maintained as they would be 30 years ago. The role of the council shifted, and certainly the financial situation of the council is not the same as it was 30 years ago, and there are always economies. And we don't spend as much as we used to on flower beds. It's always a choice, as when you're balancing the budget, as to where to spend your money.